When we come back, I'm George Knapp. We're talking with Michael Horn about the Billy Meier case. This is Coast to Coast AM. Welcome back, everyone. As always, the staff of Coast to Coast picking some great music, Walking on the Moon, the Police, to go along with our full moon tonight, and to get us back into our conversation with Michael Horn. We're talking about the Billy Meier UFO contact case, and we're about to get to the meat of the matter. That is the legitimacy of the photos that Meier has made public. Michael, you expressed some reservation there at the end about whether I was going to bring somebody on and spring them on you. No, I'm not.
No, and it's okay. It doesn't. Yeah. I'd be happy to engage anybody. People have the right to, make their case, and I certainly have a right to, make mine and attempt to refute back and forth. No.
Well, I wouldn't sandbag you is all I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Maybe there'll be an opportunity sometime to. I'm certainly been in contact with some of the folks who have been your toughest critics, and they've sent me a couple of questions and issues to raise with you when they heard you were going to be on the show, and of course I'll get into that, which I was going to do anyway.
Sure.
Basically, the photos. It's sort of the heart and soul of the Meier case. And you mentioned something that I know has been raised by the critics about the fact that you have no access to the negatives. That's caused you all kinds of grief, hasn't it?
Well, it actually hasn't, because I've looked at this way. If there are people from outer space who are far, far advanced of us, and they can actually travel here and do all these things, and there really have to be a few steps ahead of us as well, intellectually, psychologically, etc. If they exist, couldn't they just show up and give us 5 minutes all over the world? Everybody would know it's real. But when you get into the writing and the rationale in the case, you find that is something that they won't do, they wouldn't do, and there's some very profound reasons for it. I mean, I'm not trying to skirt. I'm trying to give you how I arrived at not being troubled by not having negatives. The photographs themselves were very well tested, and anybody that claims that they're hoaxed and says that this is, something that was manufactured by this man has to answer some questions themselves. How did he do all of the 1964 photos in India? How did he do the films? How did he have a UFO hovering above his head? How does he have 3 UFOs, we show this in the film, hovering in the background with a tree branch in front, not just the photograph, but the ship's filmed there. And they're moving in slight pendulum kind of a movement and a up and down motion at the same time in different relationship to each other, subtly changing. How did he do the ones with the ship over the road with the cars driving by underneath? And how did he do one that, though the skeptic doesn't seem to be able to see it, where the UFO goes partially behind the hill and flies back up to center screen? This is 1975 to 79. And how did he take all of those photographs? The interviews that were done with the owners of the photo shop there, the people who either developed or sent away all of Meier's films and photos to be developed, they were very conservative Swiss people, and when they first started getting back these photos in the mail, their mind was blown. So Gary Kinder, who was another investigator who wrote the book Light Years, troubled himself to go and interview Mr. and Mrs. Baer extensively. And he came away, as he did with his interviews with other people, including the scientific experts who basically, vetted Meier's material, saying, listen, this man, he wasn't shooting models. There was no evidence of it on the film or photographs. He only came in here for camera and tripod and film. He never bought equipment for developing or enlarging. And the investigators were able to, to search for records and all sorts of things, and there was just nothing traceable to Meier, including no co-conspirators. So when you start looking at how something is done for a population where we have to do this thinking ourselves and we have to fight about it and go through this whole process, there's no negatives. How convenient. But, of course, there were metal samples, and we have the analysis of Marcel Vogel, IBM scientist, the genius, who basically says after 45 minutes, I can't make these metals, and he describes why. So I'm not troubled by that any more than I was troubled by the fact that the sound recordings were analyzed in 3 separate sound studios, including the one at the Naval Base in Connecticut, and nobody could. They had no known sound source. They weren't generated by any equipment they knew of. And they said to do this, you'd have to have a bank of synthesizers. You're going back to the 80s. And they said, we're not even sure then that you could do it. So you have such a preponderance of varied evidence. And here you've got a guy with, literally the one arm tied behind his back? No, it's missing. How did he do it? And that is the question I ask in this film.
Let's go back to the negatives or the film. What's the story on that? Is there none? Does it not exist?
The truth of the matter is that there are some. And Meier, at this point in his life, says, you know what? I don't care. I don't need to submit medals and films and all the rest. It's no longer about that. People can decide for themselves if they, he says, look, so what if the negatives go out there and they say, oh, they're genuine negatives, it's really real. What then? People are going to go, oh, that makes us accept the fact that this is real and all the rest of the evidence didn't compel us? Or someone's going to say, oh, the negatives are not real. Then everyone's going to say, oh, well, then the case isn't real. This is part of the psychology of the case, in my opinion. There is, James Deardorff has thrown this term plausible deniability in. And it applies in a number of places in the case where you just want to be able to say, well, let's cinch it with this. No. It's like the film that we show in our film as well of the UFO circling the tree. Well, skeptics say, well, it's just an object on a string. Outside, in front of a house, in front of a tree, with all of that space between the object and the top of the frame, and you notice when the ship starts to move, it stops and hangs at an angle to the side. Will you tell me how he did that? There's never answers. There's never anybody, whether it's Ritzman or Biedny or anybody, that comes forward and says, look, I'll show you. This is it. It's identical. This is how he did it. I used the same camera. Here's the model. No.
We need to take a short break. Just very quickly, though, can you tell me, have you seen these negatives, that there are some negatives? You've seen them?
I haven't, and I don't know what it would mean to me if I did. Now, Wendell Stevens and Lee and Britt have, but people, of course, call them names because, after all, they think that they were doing this for money, and they spent a small fortune of their money to investigate the case. And I thought it was quite appropriate that they could put out a beautiful book like the one you and I and other people have seen to try to show this to the world and get paid for their trouble. So I think they know about some negatives, too, and if you ever talk to them, they might tell you, but I don't know that you're going to pry them out of anybody.
Well, I do talk to them on occasion, and maybe I'll ask them that question. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with more of Michael Horn regarding Billy Meier on Coast to Coast AM. Stick around. Welcome back to Coast AM. I'm George Knapp. We're talking with Michael Horn about the Billy Meier case and the incredible photos that have been published and out there in the public arena for a number of years now. You mentioned the name of Jeff Ritzman, and he's obviously one of the most vehement critics of the Meier photos. Basically, you issued a challenge. Hey, if you guys who don't like the Meier story can produce the same stuff, let's see it. Is that right?
That's correct.
And were they able to?
No. As I said, Jeff produced a number of photos of a model UFO, and as I told him, I have no problem saying it, I thought they were good. In other words, the effect. And this is what a number of skeptics have tried to say. We've duplicated the effect. The problem with Jeff's photos, as was pointed out to me, I had the same feeling, but some photographers said, well, these are very clearly small objects close to the camera. And if you look at the Meier shots, because of haze and distance, there are, and of course clarity, either Meier, if he was focused in the distance, you'd get a clear shot, but the trees in the foreground would be blurred, or vice versa, depending on the camera he used in the camera setting. So that's when I issued the challenge after Jeff had produced these photos, and he then let slip that he's a miniature tree cultivator. I said, well, this could really bring us to a point where maybe you can make a better case than with your little model photos. Take a photo with one of your miniature trees and show us that that's